Okay, today we're going to talk through everything that you need to know about a brand deal. Now, why should you listen to me? Great question. Let me answer it for you. I've worked in social media marketing and influencer strategy for 10 years now, before influencers were even really a thing. I worked on the business side. I built influencer programs for companies. Probably at this point, I've negotiated over like 500, 600, 700 brand deals. But I know more than just the business side, because often the business side isn't thinking from the creator's best perspective, thinking about the business's best perspective. I've also managed creators, and so I'm often negotiating partnerships on creator behalf. I'm very passionate about making sure that creators get a good deal. So today I'm going to talk you through a few things, because there's a lot of really important information that is not distilled down to creators that is incredibly imperative, that if you don't have a manager, if you don't have representation, you're kind of just swimming through trying to figure it out yourself. Well, not today. I've got you. Let's go. I'll do a completely separate video on like outreach and pursuing brand deals. We're skipping to the part where you're having the back and forth conversations on beginning to execute a brand deal. Then I want to be very clear that I'm not a lawyer. So don't look at this as legal advice. If you need legal advice, go get legal advice from a lawyer, not me. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about 3 different categories of brand deals, because depending on what type of content creator you are, you'll be looking at a different process and a different deal. So there is UGC, there is traditional creator brand deals, and then there's what I call embedded brand deals. UGC, pretty straightforward. A lot of us know what this is, but I'll go in really quickly. UGC brand deals are centered around you creating content for the brand that they'll leverage for their websites, they'll leverage for their ads, they'll leverage for their own social media channels. It does not always involve you posting on your channels. And in fact, everybody can be a UGC creator. Build a portfolio of shooting content for businesses, and you can pitch yourself even without a large following. These contracts do tend to be smaller in payouts. However, there's a lot of different variables that can come into UGC. The traditional brand deal, normally when you're thinking about generating income as a content creator, you think about the sort of brand deals that most of your favorite creators have. Straightforward, you give deliverables, you get paid directly for deliverables, the end. I'm not even gonna include affiliate content creators in here. That's a completely separate branch, not really under the brand deal umbrella. I can make a video about affiliate marketing if you're interested in that, but we're not gonna talk about it today. Traditional brand deal, you're often somebody with a somewhat established following, 5,000 followers plus. You can absolutely get brand deals at smaller numbers, but I kind of focus around like that micro influencer category, 5,000 plus. The difference between traditional brand deals and UGC content is that when you're doing traditional, it's really focused on talking to your audience. It's you know them, they're your community. That's what the brand wants access to. It's not solely to them about getting content that they can use on their platform. It's more about tapping into your audience. These are often gonna be brands related to your niche. I'll kind of talk through some of the different deliverables here in a moment. Ads usage tends to be something that's in UGC partnerships, not always something that's in traditional brand partnerships. Little subplot on traditional media is celebrity media. If you are a celebrity, perhaps watching this, there are many considerations that you should have that are different from a traditional online social media influencer. Often you're going to have a team, there's going to be a lot more people to work through, but there's often a lot more coordination around how the campaign is deployed. You will potentially be leveraged for website placement. You will potentially be leveraged for press and PR placements in a way that's different from a traditional influencer. Also, some of the considerations that can come with celebrity influencers are different forms of payment. And with these sorts of negotiations, there are a couple different things that are open to celebrity influencers that really aren't open to traditional influencers. And those can be things like equity in the brand, or more leverage in getting upfront payments, or a different sort of payout schedule than would tend to be common with a traditional influencer brand deal. Finally, we're going to talk about embedded. This is a form of brand deal that I think is going to become more and more prominent. And actually it's very advantageous to the content creator that's like, can I have some fucking stability, please? You know, in the marketing world, I know in the content creator world, it's sort of just like ebb and flow, ebb and flow, ebb and flow. And so what embedded creators are they're basically creators that are, you can kind of look at it almost as like a contractor for the company. You're creating regular content monthly for their channels. You may also be sharing it to your channels, but it's almost like they're taking your persona, they're taking your community, and they're sort of embedding it in theirs, and really having you be like the micro face of the brand for as long as the brand deal goes. These can tend to be like retainer style, or a really, really wonderful rate to have some consistency. We all want long-term content creator partnerships. Most content partnerships are going to be one-offs, so don't feel discouraged if you're being outreach for brand deals and they're like singular, just like one term, one quick post sort of thing. That tends to be the case. A lot of brands are testing to see if they should do something deeper with you. Now that we've defined the different types of brand deals, let's move into some key specifics that you should be mindful of when you are working through negotiating your brand deal. Okay, so working down, first and foremost are the deliverables. Deliverables are very straightforward. They are what you deliver. So think a traditional package is like 1 reel and 3 Instagram stories with link clickouts. Like that's a very traditional deliverable package. It is what you are going to execute in exchange for the money. At this point in our social media landscape, you're going to probably hear the word syndication, syndicated, or cross-posting. And that simply means that you may take your IG reel and you post a video to TikTok and you post a video to YouTube Shorts. It's incredibly common to syndicate across platforms. However, if they're getting an access to multiple platforms, you should charge more. The rate that you give for the baseline video should include your posting and your creation time. If they're like syndicated to TikTok, be methodical and strategic about how you charge up for syndication. It's on a case-by-case basis. All I'm saying is I wouldn't post to all three for the same rate I'd post to one. So you work through your deliverables. That's the thing that you're gonna get thrown at first in almost all brand deal emails. They're gonna give you like a, hey, here's what you want, give us a rate card, let us know what the rates look like for these deliverables. That's gonna be honestly probably within the first 2 emails that you receive when somebody's wanting to explore a brand deal with you. Now let's talk about something that trips people up, and it is very frustrating because brands will not highlight this often, so you need to be mindful, especially if you don't have somebody representing you, that you're very clear about what's allotted here. So that would be usage rights. Usage rights refers to where the brand can use your content. Often it's as simple as organic social media usage rights, which means they can share the post on their Instagram, they can put it on their Facebook, they can put it wherever socially. But there's a difference between organic social media usage rights and paid media rights. Paid media rights is when they can put money behind the content and use that content for ads to sell their product. This can be spark codes, this can be whitelisting, where they're basically running ads through your profile, which means it looks like the ad is coming from you, or they take the content and run it through their Meta Ads Manager. Same thing under the umbrella of paid media usage rights. I'd be a little more mindful if they're interested in whitelisting or spark code, because again, it's coming from your profile, which is why you should always make sure that you only take brand deals that you align with, because if you get to the point where they're discussing paid media rights, you want it to be something you feel comfortable sort of being the face of. Always charge more for paid media usage. And you should always be clear, if they don't define it in the deliverables breakdown, if they don't define usage rights, you should make sure that they're clear that it's organic social media usage only by default, because some brands won't ask and they'll run it paid, and we don't, that's not cool. We don't do that. Often what I do with paid media usage rights is I charge a sort of like monthly rate. So we've got a partnership going, it's gonna go for 3 months. We have a like broken down rate for each month. They want to extend another 3 months, broken down rate for each month. And that's how we ensure that if they choose to extend, you're getting paid again, because they're still using your content even after the first post. I want to be really clear about usage rights. This is something that I am so against, and I really hate that it gets snuck in there. But you never, ever give usage rights for anything in perpetuity. If you see the word perpetuity, you want to be like, no, we need to talk about that, because perpetuity means forever. Forever and ever and ever and ever. Here's why perpetuity in brand deals can be really dangerous. Not only is it hard to quantify paying for something in perpetuity, like there's not that monthly increment that you can be like, charge for this, so it's really abstract. Are they going to use it for the next 50 years? Are they going to use it for 1 day? What the fuck do we mean by in perpetuity? Nobody knows, because nobody knows what they're going to use it for yet. But the other thing about in perpetuity is, let's say the brand you work with has a huge scandal. Something goes really, really wrong with the brand that you worked with, and they're using your face for ads everywhere because they just have access in perpetuity. We do not want that. Again, not an attorney. There's not always going to be a clause or a strong argument ethically. A brand gets canceled on social media might not be enough to get you out of a contract or get you out of paid usage rights. So I never, ever allow in perpetuity. It's not a good practice. Ever. The end. Another key thing that's going to give you so much information, both about if you want to do this partnership and if it's aligned, and some other really key details in considering your rate, is the brief. So the brief is a breakdown of what the brand wants from you, what they're thinking for the video, what the campaign's about, and the timeline. And the timeline is a really key piece when it comes to thinking about rates, because there's a big difference between the brand saying, we want this to go live in the next month, and we want this to go live in 3 days, and we need 4 videos from you, and this and this and this. We charge more if it is a very, very short timeline. We always want to be mindful of the timeline, and so that should factor into your rate. But the brief is also really helpful for letting you understand what the brand's expectations are and making sure that you feel aligned with what's being outlined. It is working with your audience, that's working with how you show up on social media. That's not something that you'll feel incredibly artificial in delivering. Now, the best brands will be open to your creativity because they understand that you know your audience the best. However, when you get into like bigger corporate brands and all that, it becomes way more of like a structured process that I will say often lacks creativity, but they're trying to accomplish something different than most smaller independent brands are when they're working with content creators. So the brief is going to be really important for you. Smaller brands may not always have a brief ready for you, but it is something that you'll then want to gain clarity on. What is the expected timeline? When are you wanting this to be executed, and what are your rough ideas? So if they don't have a beautiful brief packet, that doesn't mean they're a bad brand and you shouldn't work with them. It just means you need to ask more questions, because you need to have all those answers when you're making this decision. And if something in the brief or the deliverables or the usage rights makes you feel a little odd, if you're just kind of like, this is sitting with me weird, so many content creators are incredibly nervous to ask a question back to the agency or the brand because they're like, well, I don't want them to cancel it. They're not going to. Like, a lot of these simple questions were just like, oh yeah, I forgot to clarify that or whatever. A lot of brands, again, unless you're dealing with like corporations, are going to be pretty flexible with you within reason. We're going to move on to some ethical considerations when you're moving through the brand deal process. Ooh, we love talking about morality and ethics here. A few ethical considerations that you need to have when you're doing a brand deal that you may not have if you haven't done a lot of brand deals before, or you just haven't really immersed yourself in that market. First and foremost, you should always, and you are required to, disclose when you are paid to mobilize for a brand. Multiple ways to do that, obviously. Hashtag ad. All the major social media networks now have a toggle that you can do to say this is a paid partnership and who it's a paid partnership from. Some brands have you say it in the caption, some brands have you say it in the actual video, but you must disclose that you are paid. Now, unfortunately, you will probably run into, in your content creator career, some brands that are like, maybe like, don't disclose. Like, maybe just like exclude that. The reason they'll tell you is it harms performance. And it doesn't not harm performance. We're all aware of when we're being sold to. However, you are the one that's on the hook for not disclosing, should you choose to not disclose. I think if we're striving for a more ethical social media universe, a more ethical creator marketplace, disclosing is like a must. To me, it's a must, and I would never ever ask a creator not to. Number two, for a brand partnership, you need to use royalty-free music. So as much as we love like bipping and bopping around to Tate McRae or Sabrina Carpenter or Lady Gaga or whatever you want to like slap in there, when you are doing paid media, the rules become a lot more hazy than they already are, right? It's already hazy in the content marketplace. Like, am I allowed to like use this? Well, a lot of that we can get away with on an individual or creative basis. But when it moves into like money being exchanged, that's when like labels and people don't feel like playing nice because they're like, well, you made money and you used this IP. No. So want to be really mindful to not be using IP. Don't like have massive labels, like don't like have other brands sported in someone else's ad, because that isn't, they don't have the usage rights. You don't have the licensing to do so. And so that's something you have to be on the lookout for. It's something where I've run into needing to have creators pull their content down because they actually ended up shooting the video with like a logo over here, or, you know, showing footage of something that we don't have the licensing rights to. And it's like, you need to pull that down, and we need to, you know, reshoot or do something to avoid showcasing IP that isn't ours. So that's something you need to be mindful of, that a lot of creators miss and toe the line on. But again, it's kind of like one of those things. If you take that risk and you get caught by a big enough fish, you're going to be the one that's on the hook. You're going to be the one that has to navigate that. The brand's going to be like, whoopsies, creator shouldn't have done that. They're going to roll you. So better to just play it safe from the start. And most brands should catch that too. Most brands should be like, we can't use this. We're going to get into the fun part of working through a brand deal negotiation. And that is, right, I know what you want. I know what you want from me. You want to be told, here's what you should charge. And I'm going to tell you, it's like the Wild West out there. Oh, I know, so annoying. But here is the thing. I've fielded emails from content creators with 40,000 followers that want to charge $15,000 for a singular post. And I've fielded offers from influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers that want to charge $100 for a post. I've represented micro creators all the way up to million follower creators to celebrities. It is the Wild West. You need to know what you're worth. You need to know what your time's worth. You need to come up with what is equal for you. That said, I am going to share a very, very rough outline of just a starting spot to think of based on your audience size. There's so many variables when you're determining pricing, including what the deliverable package looks like, how engaged your community is, all of the platforms that you're going to be sharing across, the brand size. You always want to charge more for the big guys than the little businesses because they have the money to spend. So this is a rough list. Don't take it as the Bible. Don't take it as I'm saying, well, he said that I can only charge $500 from. No. This is just a baseline to work from, okay? It is a person by person basis. So take it for what you will. Here's the numbers. And those numbers are based on like a single short form video deliverable. And a lot of people argue with this because we all have different individualized experiences. Crazy. So you'll see a lot of influencer managers that'll be like, that's outlandish. Those prices are way too high. And you'll also see people that are like, that's outlandish. Those prices are way too low. Listen, y'all, as we all know, working in this industry, it's an individualized basis. But these are some rough ballparks for you to start working from. And hopefully if you see this and you're like, wow, I'm charging way under that, you stop charging way under that. And if you're like, I'm charging way over that, and you're like locking the brand deals, then great job. Okay, you're doing a great job selling yourself. So some other factors, again, that should move into your pricing strategy are syndication. Are you syndicating it across platforms? Are you doing paid media usage rights? What is the turnaround time, et cetera, et cetera? Like, these are all things that should factor into that cost and charge. Now that we've worked through rate, we're going to talk about payment terms. And this is another piece that really isn't fun for content creators and can trip them up. And I've seen some really, really predatory, yucky bullshit from some brands out there and some agencies more perhaps that is really non-advantageous to content creators that I want to nip in the bud right now. So payment terms basically means when you're going to get paid. So you do your deliverables and you send your invoice. You should send an invoice because you're a business. Most of the time the business is going to request that you send an invoice to you. So it's just records for everybody. You send an invoice after you execute the deliverables, but you'll know your payment terms ahead of time because payment terms are in the contracts. And so most often the payment terms are net 30, which means 30 days after like your invoice is received or after the partnership is completed, you will receive payment. If you have really strong leverage, if you're a celebrity, if you've just got a way bigger audience than this brand and you're kind of doing them a favor, you can advocate for upfront payment. A lot of celebrity talent that I've worked with tends to get 50 to 100% of the payment upfront for the execution. That's not something that I found to be common for content creators. And when we're on the brand side, you know, the net 30 is really based on accounting and keeping these systems moving with cash flow. I know we don't love waiting 30 days, but that is common. Now, if you see more than net 30, that's where you should perk up and prepare to negotiate. So net 45, net 60, it's got to be pretty sweet, y'all. It's got to be a pretty juicy deal. And I almost never. There have only been like maybe a handful of times that I've ever allowed more than net 30. And it was like really big partnerships where it's like they've got the leverage and this is really big spending and we'll like we don't have the leverage to be like, no, but we're also not going to walk away. But in general, I say never over net 30. You want to be really aware of this because you don't want a not so happy surprise later. And I've seen some really predatory language in contracts where brands will basically be like, oh, we're agreeing to a 6-month deal. And so it's net 60 on the 6 months of you delivering content, which means, oh wait, you're not even going to get paid till like 8 months after you start this partnership. So for 8 months, you're going to do free labor? I don't think so. You really want to like hone in on that before signing any contracts. Again, consult with a lawyer. If you need legal advice, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just saying that's something that I've watched creators really get screwed on. And I also want to empower you. If you hit day number 31 on that timeline of when you were supposed to receive payment, email them. Email your point of contact. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, I'm checking in on this invoice. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll give them more time. What can often happen is that whoever is managing the brand deal or campaign is not the one managing payments. And so they get worked out of the loop very quickly because they're on to managing another brand deal negotiation with a whole other group of creators. And so their brain is off of the brand deal you did with them a month ago. When you give them that reminder, they're able to chase down the finance team. So I literally mean it. One day after you are supposed to receive payment, flag it, because more often than not, what I've received when somebody's like a day late on payment or so is they're just like, oh shit, this got stuck in finance and I didn't even see it. I didn't even see the flag. Let's work this out. Again, it's a dance, it's a collaboration. You want to be friendly, you want to work with people. Again, you want to be rehired. So allow room for people to be human, but you also need to advocate for yourself, especially if you don't have representation there to annoy the shit out of somebody for not paying. So this is really the anatomy of a brand deal. These are like the key pieces that you need to be aware of as you're moving through negotiation. A few little housekeeping things that you may or may not see on your brand deals. You might see a revisions term where they're basically like, hey, we want a certain amount of edits or drafts and we want to have say. That's super common, or brands will just ask, hey, can you change this little thing? Obviously, within reason, be open to that. You may see some creators online talking about kill fees and sort of putting something in place where if a brand shuts down a brand deal, you know, like let's say within a certain short period before the brand deal is supposed to launch, they're just like, haha, never mind. You could try and operate a kill fee. That's not something that's going to be viable if you're a smaller creator. You can try to work it in there. And obviously 99% of the time the brand deals just go without a hitch. It's a very straightforward process, but you can consider having like a kill fee if you know you're a larger creator and or you've been burned a few times. I've never run a campaign or had a creator going through a campaign where they canceled the campaign after the deliverables were created. Like we've never been in one where it wasn't canceled well before we were at that stage, but it does happen. So I would use your individual experience to determine what you need to express there. A lot of brands will ask for 7-day, 14-day, 30-day analytics if they don't have you hooked up to like one of their systems or their dashboards. And so that's really common. That's not like an additional deliverable. That's not something where you're like, no, that wasn't in our terms. Like that's very common to just send them through screenshots. So don't feel like that's weird or they're taking advantage of you. It's just they may not have access to the analytics and you want them to know how it performed. Even if it didn't perform well, it has no bearing on if you get paid if it didn't perform well. We're past that point. You've done what you agreed to. And so if the video tanked, you're not going to not get paid just because you sent in the analytics and they weren't great analytics. So like, that's no biggie. Just send them in. Brands are aware too if the videos did well or not. Let me know if you have any specific questions of things I didn't cover. This is really like the baseline anatomy of 99% of brand deals that are going to be out there. And these are the things that you need to be considering. I am going to make some other videos on many of the things that I've learned in this creator ecosystem, ways to do outreach, affiliate marketing, etc., etc., etc. But let me know if there's anything specific that you're curious about and I can make a video on it based on my experience. And with that, subscribe, please, unless you hate me. I do hope this video was helpful. That's my goal here with sharing this information. I really do believe in creators and the value that they generate. I also believe that creators are the future of marketing. They're already the current of marketing, but I do believe community and connection is what we're going back to, and creators are that element in the social media sphere. Get after it, value what you create, treat it accordingly. Bye.